can't remember if like the past like couple videos I posted my bed was clean, but we're back to my roots. No clean bed here. I feel like that should be like a way to like determine like how I'm doing. You know how people like when they studied like Van Gogh's like self-portraits, if he was using like a lot of green, like his mental was like doing bad. Like if my bed's made, we know that something's going on. But we're not gonna sit here and talk about Van Gogh or my bed. The PlayStation had so many wonderful titles for it. There's Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper, and my personal favorite out of the bunch, Jak and Daxter. Having played all three of these games, I really wanted to go back and revisit them. Same thing with like the other 3 games that were made that I haven't gotten to. I mean, I did try to play Jak X Combat Racing on like that PS2 emulator, and I don't know if it was the ROM I picked, it just wouldn't boot, it wouldn't work. But just like the combat racing game, there's also a PSP game called Daxter, and then the last game released known as The Lost Frontier. So we're gonna be covering all these games today, but I think it's fitting to start with the main series itself. I just realized I've been holding up my games with my undone nails. Not like me. See, that's another thing we can know is if my nails are done or if they're not done. I've just been busy. I haven't had time to do my nails, but please know they will be done next video. Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. This is the first game and it was released in 2001 for the PS2. And in this game, like all the other games, you play as Jak. He's just some silent dude, does not talk, and he's on a mission to help his best friend, Daxter. After they traveled to the Misty Island, and little bro, our little guy, Daxter, he gets turned into this otter weasel, like, thing. They call it an ottsel, but I honestly don't really know what it is. It's kind of fucked up. Like, who did this? Crying, laughing emoji. But is it like rude of me to say that I like prefer Daxter as this like little thing, this little guy, instead of like his actual self? Is that mean? So as the game goes, they get some guidance from the sage and some little help from that mysterious eco that they're starting to learn about. It's an ancient energy that was left behind by a race called the Precursors, just like the title of the game. Yeah. So they set out on an adventure to stop the other 2 sages who are like evil and corrupted from flooding the world with that dark eco. And okay, like listen, the only thing is like I feel as if I've heard this story before. And I'm not saying that the story in which this sounds like very familiar to copied Jak and Daxter. That's not what I'm saying. The gameplay, though, is so good. It even holds up to like today's standards of 3D platforms. The main objective is to gather the items to progress to the levels, and you're mainly controlling Jak, who has like access to abilities like a double jump, like a spinning kick, and one of the things that's been so praised about this game is that there are 0 loading screens. Very, very revolutionary at the time. So you'll be hunting down the power cells, gathering the precursor orbs, and there's also a lot of like master eco power-ups, but I absolutely just adore this game. And if you hadn't had the chance to play it, please play Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. That is, like, out of all these games, just at least play that one. So now we're moving on to Jak 2. This game was released in 2003. Main thing that you'll like notice here is that this game puts like a high emphasis on like combat than it did in like the first Jak and Daxter. There's like new weapons and devices and things like that. So Jak 2 takes place in the same fictional universe as the first one did. Naughty Dog did also work on this game as well. This takes place after the events of the first game, and it mainly like revolves around Haven City, which is like this dystopia ruled by Baron Praxis. And oh my god, which by the way, if you were wondering where the fuck the voice actor for Mr. Krabs was in Battle for Bikini Bottom,
SpongeBob, this flapping robot crisis is—
oh, he was working on this game. He was literally busy working on this game and being the Baron.
I will not be remembered as the man who lost this city to those— No! Not my cash register!
So yes, Mr. Krabs is in Jak 2. See, I'll take any chance to talk about Battle for Bikini Bottom. So after arriving in Haven City, Jak is captured by one of the Crimson Guards in Haven City, and he becomes a test subject to the Baron, and he's basically being tested on for like 2 years straight, because Daxter then finds him and goes, bro, it's been 2 years, buddy. Where the hell you been? Why you sitting here? But since with like all these experiments, it gives him like new abilities to transform into Dark Jak, He's like a way more powerful like version of himself. Also, when Daxter finally like helps break out Jack, we hear him speak for the first time in the series.
I'm gonna kill Praxis.
So again, Haven City does act like the main hub in Jak 2. It connects you to like all the other areas. Instead of collecting power cells like in the first game, you can now like take on missions from different allies around the city to progress the story. And getting around is a lot more fun too. You can like hijack hover cars, and you can also cruise around on a jet board that lets you grind rails and shit. So you can really use the environment around you, I think, very well. And I really do think they did a great job with this game. It really does hold true to like the main core of Jak and Daxter, while obviously giving us like, you know, something new. Now on to Jak 3. It was released in 2004 and the game was published by Naughty Dog. And this is obviously the sequel to Jak 2, and it's supposed to serve as the conclusion of this trilogy. And like its predecessor, the gameplay of Jak 3 is kind of just like a blend of like platforming, driving, and gun combat. And the game is supposed to be set like a couple years or a year after like the main events of Jak 2. And Jak 3 largely follows on the Wasteland, a large desert, only kind of like referred to a little bit briefly in the previous entry as being like basically completely uninhabited and inhospitable. And like a few of the original protagonists from Jak 2 do reappear in this game. There is a new secondary villain. He's basically like this like very like self-absorbed Haven City aristocrat type guy, and he like banishes Jak to the Wasteland at the beginning of the game. You'd like find out though like this guy wants to journey to the core of the planet to gain like the power of the precursors. And even while he's like attempting this though, we do get to see like this new species known as like the Dark Makers begin to invade the planet. And then you find out the Dark Makers are the precursors who have been corrupted by Dark Eco. The main antagonist is that like former Crimson Guard commander, but he's like all like cyborg-like in this game because he got like super like fucked up and like injured in the second one. And he starts manufacturing like the Crimson Guard death bots again. A lot of the missions just consist of like anything from like defeating like a particular enemy, reaching a specific location, or just completing a puzzle. And obviously like there's the exception of just like linear missions in there as well. And when you finish the game, it also introduces like hero mode, which is basically like expert mode kind of thing, where you can just like replay the game but like at a higher difficulty. All right, so now we're gonna start moving on to the others. I just want to start off with Jak X Combat Racing. This one was also published by Naughty Dog and Sony, and it is a racing game. Plot follows our protagonist Jak and all of his friends and allies who have been poisoned, and they have to partake in like this championship because if they beat this, you know, little racing game, they get to get the antidote and not be poisoned, which is so cool and fun. The gameplay for this game is much like other racing games, you know, like you just beat the races to progress on in the game and unlock new characters and things like that. There's a lot of weapons and power-ups you can pick up to destroy other like players and characters while you're driving. And the two main modes of playing the game are adventure and exhibition. So you can only play as Jak in the adventure mode, and you have to participate in the series of the Eco Cup. I also just want to like take a second and point out how insane this soundtrack is. So the soundtrack of the game was composed with assistance from members of other various bands, including Limp Bizkit, Tool, 9 Inch Nails, and Queen of the Stone Age, just to name a few. And now we have Daxter for the PSP. This game came out in 2006. It was produced by Naughty Dog, but it was developed by a company called Ready at Dawn. So Daxter is supposed to take place like during like 2-year like time skip at the beginning of Jak 2. And in the game you get to play as Daxter, just like the title is, you know, his name, and he's searching for Jak. He mainly does like the same kind of moves that you see Jak doing, where there's like the double jump, and a lot of the combat is like mostly up close, you know, using like a bug swatter because he's also supposed to be like an exterminator, like a bug exterminator. There's also combo moves that you can take down enemies with, but since he's smaller, he does get like a few new moves where it's like and crouch through tight spaces and bounce higher off of trampolines. You can also find like portals throughout the main world that take you to the missions that you need to complete. And last but not least is Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier. So with this game, Naughty Dog didn't touch it at all. It was developed by High Impact Games and then published by Sony. And this game came out in 2009 and is the 6th installment of the Jak and Daxter series. And a lot of the gameplay is very similar to the other games. And the game begins with Jak and Daxter, and they're escorting Kira. She's on like some journey to become like a sage herself to help find the reason of like why there's some worldwide eco shortage. So they all work together to like rebuild the eco seeker and find the eco core, all while dealing with like the sky pirates. Then like near the end of the game, you see like Skyheat, and he absorbs like this massive dark eco, and it basically turns into like this like big scary monster guy. So with the change in studio and Naughty Dog not really touching this game, there are, you know, fans of The Lost Frontiers, but it does also get some criticism from like longtime players of the series itself, and it resulted in a game with a lot of mixed reviews. So there's a lot of different tone, style, and like approach to the gameplay, and some of the fans didn't really feel like it felt true to like a Jak and Daxter game. Some people felt like the controls were clunky or the platforming was less polished than like previous entries, and the combat felt a little bit more repetitive and basic to some players. And a lot of people were saying too, like the original trilogy had like this strong, evolving story with like deeper world building in it, and they were saying like The Lost Frontier was like less like impactful. You know, it just didn't matter. But I don't know, like I also feel like really mixed on the whole thing as well. But it like also kind of speaks to me in a way where it feels like, yeah, there's like still some story and potential in this series still that like I feel like we can dig up and like see Jak and Daxter doing new things. But then again, you're like, okay, when does it start becoming like beating a dead horse sort of thing? I don't know. I really don't know. You guys tell me. What do you think? It really is just a fantastic series. And now I am going to go play Sly Cooper because I also miss those games as well.